Well, the halls of Congress are empty right now thanks to Donald Trump's proposed slush fund. Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune canceled a planned vote-a-rama on the party's ICE funding, a vehicle they also were maybe going to use to funnel taxpayer dollars at Trump's ballroom, unclear, and instead just said, we're done, we're out, sent the chamber home until June. Happy weekend, guys. Nice work if you can get it. Now, this followed an hours-long meeting with Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who came into the private Senate Republican caucus lunch, where a bunch of Republicans, some reporting says 25 members, got up and speak to him, dissatisfied with Blanche's answers about Trump's $1.8 billion seditionist boondoggle, and signaled they would help Democrats block both that and the ballroom fund. Then, after the meeting, reporters asked Thune if the White House had consulted him on either of these two main funding initiatives.
Well, it would have been nice if they had consulted. I think they probably would have gotten plenty of advice from lots of folks about it, but it's water under the bridge now, and you play the hand you're dealt, and we'll sort it out from here. But obviously it became a more complicated and bumpy path than we had hoped for.
Hello and welcome, guys. Dr. John is here. So this what just happened, guys. A political earthquake has hit Capitol Hill as senior Republican senators, once Trump's most loyal defenders, are now openly calling his decisions foolish, ethically questionable, and dangerous. The unthinkable has become reality. The loyalists have turned, and the rebellion from within his own party signals a fundamental break in Trump's grip on the GOP. The silence that used to greet Trump's most controversial moves has been shattered by a chorus of criticism that is growing louder by the day. And it's not coming from the usual suspects. It's not coming from Democrats who have opposed Trump from day one. It's coming from the very heart of the Republican establishment, from committee chairs and party leadership, from senators who have built their careers on supporting Republican presidents and advancing Republican priorities. These are the people who stood by Trump through 2 impeachments.
Senator Chris Van Hollen is a Democrat of Maryland. He recently grilled the acting attorney general on that $1.8 billion fund during an appropriations hearing. Senator Van Hollen joins me now. So my understanding from the Senate caucus lunch, obviously you were not in there, it's the other caucus, was that they were pretty unhappy with this whole situation. I want to read you just a few more quotes here and get your reaction to what's going on that side. Tillis, imagine that, a fund that's set up to compensate people who assaulted Capitol police officers. People that had pled guilty to physical acts may actually be able to get compensated. How absurd is that coming out of my mouth? Here's Mitch McConnell. So the nation's top law enforcement official is asking for a slush fund to pay people who assault cops? Utterly stupid, morally wrong, take your pick. It does seem like they found a thing that they won't walk the plank for.
Well, Chris, I think what really upset them was maybe not so much the slush fund, although people like Tom Tillis, who are retiring, have been very vocal about it. But the fact that we were going to offer amendments to the bill that we were supposed to be working on tonight that would have put the question to them, do you want your taxpayer dollars used to make payments to people who have been convicted of violent crimes, including...
These are the people who voted to acquit him when Democrats demanded his removal. These are the people who defended his most controversial policies and brushed aside concerns about his behavior. And now they're publicly turning on him with a ferocity that suggests this is not a passing disagreement, but a fundamental rupture. The trigger for this stunning rebellion appears to be 3 distinct issues that have pushed Senate Republicans past their breaking point. First and foremost is Trump's proposed $1.8 billion lawfare fund, a scheme that would use taxpayer money to compensate people who claim they were victimized by Department of Justice investigations. The very name of this fund, with its suggestion that the DOJ has been weaponized against Trump's allies, reveals its true purpose as a slush fund designed to reward loyalty and punish perceived enemies. Republican senators have looked at this proposal and recoiled in horror, recognizing it for what it truly is.
Beating up police officers or people who were convicted child molesters. They didn't want to face those votes, and so they decided to go home instead.
I want to be clear about this because this is part of Senate procedure where it can get wonky. But basically, as they're moving through, there are these things we call vote-a-ramas, and it's a period where the minority party can offer amendments, and you got to vote on the amendments. And the way that the majority party gets through the vote-a-rama is you just party line vote all the other party's ones down, right? You were going to offer amendments like, should money go to people that assaulted police officers? Should money go to convicted child molesters? And they were going to have to vote, yes, money should go to them, is basically what you're saying.
Well, that's exactly right, Chris. I also filed another one that said no monies from this slush fund should go to members of Congress. You may recall there are some senators who've been trying to get federal payments to them for what they claim was wrongdoing. So they would have had to also vote on whether or not these public taxpayer dollars would go to themselves or whether they would continue to be eligible under the fund. The amendment would make them ineligible. So that's exactly what's happening. You know, I'm not sure they would have actually risen up against this slush fund unless they were going to be put to the test through their votes. And I made clear, others made clear that we weren't going to get out of there on the vote-a-rama without
an attempt to use the power of the federal government for personal political gain, a brazen misuse of public funds that would set a dangerous precedent for future presidents. What makes this particularly galling to Senate Republicans is the specific language Trump has used to describe the fund and its intended beneficiaries. He wants to compensate people who were caught up in what he calls a witch hunt. But Republican senators have pointed out that some of those potential recipients include individuals who assaulted law enforcement officers during the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The idea that these individuals could receive payouts from the federal government.
Taking these votes.
Now, they've just delayed things, right? So this is a sort of short-term solution of just like unplug the gaming console from the wall, right? So that they don't have to keep playing. Yeah. But, you know, the game's saved. They're going to come back and like, it's going to be the same situation. Am I wrong?
Well, that's right. I mean, as you pointed out earlier, the underlying bill here is to provide another $70 billion to a lawless ICE operation, even though there's a huge pipeline of taxpayer dollars already sitting at ICE. So the answer is they will come back. But I think what they're hoping, Chris, is in this intervening week that the acting attorney general, who really is continuing to act like President Trump's personal attorney, but that he will somehow develop guardrails around this fund. Now, whether he can actually do that now that the cat's already out of the bag, I don't know. But that's what they were, I think, essentially telling him that he needed to do.
Right. Just to be clear, the negotiation is not to get rid of the fund, which itself, I think, is completely lawless and indefensible and essentially a theft of the public purse.
That they could be rewarded with taxpayer dollars for their actions on that dark day has proven to be a bridge too far for even Trump's most loyal defenders. They simply cannot stomach the notion that their constituents' hard-earned money might be used to compensate people who attack the very institutions of American democracy. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader who has spent years protecting Trump and blocking Democratic efforts to hold him accountable, has emerged as the most prominent voice in this rebellion. McConnell, who has been the ultimate survivor in Washington politics, who has navigated countless controversies and maintained his grip on power through sheer political will, has now publicly declared Trump's lawfare fund completely foolish and ethically questionable. Those words did not slip out accidentally. They were carefully chosen, deliberately deployed, and they carry the weight of a man who has finally decided that some lines cannot be crossed, even for a president of his own party. The significance of McConnell's break with Trump cannot be overstated. This is the man who blocked witnesses during Trump's impeachment trial. This is the man who refused to allow the Senate to even consider Trump's removal. This is the man who has consistently put party loyalty above principle, who has defended Trump through scandal after scandal. And now he's saying publicly that Trump's ideas are not just wrong, but morally indefensible. He's making a moral argument against Trump's proposal, and that is a stunning departure from the McConnell who has spent years refusing to criticize anything Trump did, no matter how outrageous or controversial. Other senior Republicans have quickly joined McConnell in this public rebuke. One senator described the lawfare fund as a fund for miscreants, language that is deliberately harsh and designed to convey absolute disgust. These are not subtle disagreements. These are not minor policy differences that can be smoothed over in a private meeting. These are direct attacks on Trump's judgment and ethics, delivered in public where everyone can see and hear them. The willingness to use such strong language suggests that Senate Republicans have moved beyond tactical disagreements into genuine moral outrage, and that is far more dangerous for Trump than any political calculation. The second issue that has triggered this rebellion is Trump's controversial agreement with Iran, a deal that Republican senators have condemned as a catastrophic foreign policy mistake. Senator Bill Cassidy has called it the most significant foreign policy misstep in many years, words that are particularly damning from a senator who has generally supported Trump's policies. Ted Cruz, another Trump ally who has defended the president through countless controversies, has said Trump is getting very poor advice and that the deal is ill-advised. Roger Wicker, who chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee and has deep expertise in national security matters, has warned that the deal could be detrimental to American interests. These are not casual criticisms. These are serious policy experts, people who have spent years studying international relations and national security, saying that Trump has made a terrible mistake. They're not just disagreeing with Trump on process or style. They're saying that the substance of the agreement is wrong, that it endangers American security, and that Trump's judgment on this matter is fundamentally flawed. And they're saying it publicly without hesitation or apology because they believe the stakes are too high to remain silent. The Iran deal criticism is particularly significant because it cuts to the heart of Trump's claim to be a strong leader on the world stage. Trump has always presented himself as a tough negotiator who won't be pushed around by foreign leaders, but this agreement appears to have undermined that image in the eyes of Republican senators. They see it as a weak deal that gives away too much to Iran while securing too little in return. They see it as a dangerous precedent that will encourage America's enemies to demand more concessions in future negotiations, and they are not afraid to say so, even if it means openly defying the president of their own party. The third issue that has pushed Senate Republicans to their breaking point is Trump's obsession with Greenland, his repeated threats to seize or occupy the territory in what can only be described as an act of international brinkmanship. Senator Thom Tillis has called Trump irresponsible for threatening to seize Greenland, and he has warned that these threats are alarming European allies and rattling Congress. Tillis is not a backbencher looking for attention. He's a serious senator who has generally supported Trump's policies, and his decision to publicly call the president irresponsible is a measure of how far Trump has pushed his own party. The Greenland situation is particularly revealing because it exposes Trump's fundamental approach to foreign policy, which seems to be based more on impulse and ego than on careful strategic calculation. Threatening to seize another country's territory is not the behavior of a serious president. It's not the behavior of someone who understands the importance of alliances and international cooperation. It's the behavior of someone who views foreign policy as a reality television show, where shock value and dramatic gestures matter more than actual results. And Republican senators are finally saying what they've been thinking in private for years. This approach is dangerous, it's reckless, and it needs to stop. What makes this moment so significant is the confluence of these three issues happening simultaneously. It's not just that Trump made a mistake on one policy or another, it's that he's making serious mistakes on multiple fronts, all at the same time, and each mistake reveals a different dimension of his dysfunction. The Lawfare Fund shows his willingness to corrupt federal institutions for personal political gain. The Iran deal shows his poor judgment on matters of war and peace. The Greenland threats show his fundamental unseriousness and his inability to behave like a responsible world leader. Together, these issues paint a picture of a president who has lost his way, and Republican senators are finally recognizing that picture for what it is. The pattern is unmistakable. For years, Republican senators protected Trump. For years, they defended Trump. For years, they rubber-stamped Trump's decisions, no matter how questionable or controversial. But now that's changing, and it's changing dramatically. Now Republicans are willing to publicly criticize Trump. Now Republicans are willing to say Trump is wrong. Now Republicans are willing to distance themselves from Trump's agenda. And the language they're using is not diplomatic or subtle. They're using words like completely foolish, ethically questionable, irresponsible, and mistake. They're directly attacking Trump's judgment and questioning his fitness for office. The shift is most dramatic when you consider who is leading this criticism. It's not just individual senators acting on their own. It's leadership. It's committee chairs. It's the people who have most consistently backed Trump over the years. Mitch McConnell is leading the charge against the lawfare fund. Roger Wicker is leading the charge against the Iran deal. Thom Tillis is leading the charge against the Greenland threats. These are not fringe figures. These are the most powerful people in the Senate, the ones who control the agenda and determine what legislation reaches the floor. And they are all saying the same thing: Trump has gone too far. The lawfare fund is the issue that has pushed Senate Republicans over the edge because it goes to the heart of what they worry about. The fund looks exactly like what Trump accused the Biden administration of doing. It looks like using federal power for personal political gain. It looks like corruption, and Republicans can't support that. They can't vote for that. They can't be associated with that because it would make them hypocrites. They've spent years accusing Democrats of weaponizing government against their political opponents, and now Trump is essentially proposing to do the same thing. They simply cannot defend that. Mitch McConnell's moral argument against the lawfare fund is particularly important because it signals that this is not just a tactical disagreement. McConnell is not saying, "I think this is politically unwise." He's saying, "This is completely foolish and ethically questionable." He's making a judgment about the fundamental rightness or wrongness of Trump's proposal. He's saying that using federal money to compensate people who assaulted the Capitol is morally indefensible, and that is the kind of argument that cannot be dismissed as mere politics. That is the kind of argument that goes to the heart of who we are as a country and what kind of government we want to have. The Iran deal criticism is similarly profound. When Bill Cassidy says the deal is the most significant foreign policy misstep in many years, he's not engaging in hyperbole. He's making a serious judgment about the substance of Trump's policy. He's saying that Trump made a catastrophic mistake that will have lasting consequences for American security. And he's saying this publicly because he believes the stakes are too high to remain silent. The same is true for Ted Cruz, who has generally been one of Trump's most reliable defenders. His decision to call the deal ill-advised and to say Trump is getting very poor advice is a significant break from his usual pattern of supporting the president. Roger Wicker's warning that the Iran deal could be detrimental to American interests carries particular weight because of his position as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. This is a man who has access to classified intelligence, who understands the military implications of foreign policy decisions, and who has a responsibility to speak out when he believes the country is making a mistake. His decision to publicly criticize Trump on this issue suggests that the concerns about the Iran deal are not just political. They are substantive. They are based on genuine worries about American security and the safety of American troops. The Greenland criticism is equally significant because it touches on Trump's basic judgment and temperament. Threatening to seize another country's territory is not something serious presidents do. It's reckless. It's irresponsible. It undermines America's relationships with its allies and sends a dangerous signal to potential adversaries. And Republican senators are saying exactly that. Thom Tillis is calling Trump irresponsible. He's saying Trump is alarming European allies. He's saying Trump is rattling Congress. And he's doing this publicly without hesitation or apology because he believes the stakes are too high to remain silent. What we're seeing is a real crack in Republican unity. What we're seeing is Republican senators willing to publicly oppose Trump. What we're seeing is a party that is starting to split over Trump. And that split could have real consequences. That split could prevent Trump from passing legislation. That split could undermine Trump's foreign policy. That split could affect elections. And this is particularly significant because it's coming from Republican leadership. It's not just backbenchers who are criticizing Trump. It's Mitch McConnell, it's senior Republican senators, it's committee chairs, it's the people who have most consistently backed Trump. And they're now publicly saying Trump is wrong. They're now publicly saying Trump has gone too far. They're now publicly drawing lines that Trump cannot cross. And that suggests that the Republican Party is at a turning point. The party is deciding whether it's going to remain Trump's party or whether it's going to move beyond Trump. The party is deciding whether it's going to continue protecting Trump no matter what, or whether it's going to hold Trump accountable. And this public criticism of the lawfare fund, the Iran deal, and the Greenland threat suggests that at least some Republican senators are ready to move beyond Trump. At least some Senate Republicans are ready to prioritize principle over party loyalty, and that's potentially the beginning of the end of Trump's control over the Republican Party. That's potentially the beginning of Republican defection. That's potentially the beginning of serious constraint on Trump's power from within his own party. And that could be the thing that actually holds Trump accountable, because Congress is the only body that can truly constrain a president. If Senate Republicans finally decide they're done with Trump, if Senate Republicans finally decide to oppose him seriously, then Trump's power starts to crumble. The timing of this rebellion is particularly important because it's happening right now. This is not historical, this is not past, this is current. Senate Republicans are currently breaking with Trump. Senate Republicans are currently publicly criticizing Trump. Senate Republicans are currently drawing lines. And that suggests that Trump's situation is deteriorating. That suggests that even Republicans are starting to see Trump as a liability. That suggests that Trump's power within his own party is declining. And the fact that Mitch McConnell is leading this criticism is particularly significant because McConnell is the most powerful Republican senator. McConnell is the one who has protected Trump most consistently. McConnell is the one who blocked impeachment votes. McConnell is the one who backed Trump repeatedly. And now McConnell is saying Trump's lawfare fund is completely foolish and ethically questionable. That's a watershed moment. That's McConnell finally saying enough is enough. That's McConnell saying Trump has crossed a moral line that cannot be uncrossed. And the lawfare fund in particular touches on something that Republicans care about: the misuse of federal power for political purposes. The lawfare fund looks exactly like what Trump accused the Biden administration of doing. The lawfare fund looks like using federal power for personal political gain. The lawfare fund looks like corruption, and Republicans can't support that. Republicans can't be part of that. Republicans can't vote for that because it would make them hypocrites. So Republicans are drawing a line. Republicans are saying the lawfare fund goes too far. Republicans are saying this is where they stop. Republicans are saying they will not support this. And that's real constraint on Trump's power. That's real accountability. That's Congress actually doing its job of checking executive power. The Iran deal criticism is about whether Trump has sound judgment on major foreign policy decisions. And Republican senators are saying Trump does not have sound judgment on Iran. Republican senators are saying Trump made a catastrophic mistake. Republican senators are saying the Iran deal is dangerous. And that's questioning Trump's fitness for office. That's questioning Trump's ability to make major decisions. And that's something that could matter in the next election or in impeachment proceedings. If enough Republican senators believe Trump is making catastrophic mistakes, if enough believe his judgment is fundamentally flawed, then they might be willing to take dramatic action to constrain him. The Greenland criticism is about whether Trump is a serious president or whether Trump is reckless and unfit. Serious presidents don't threaten to seize other countries' territory. Serious presidents don't engage in wild foreign policy brinkmanship. Serious presidents don't alarm European allies with crazy territorial demands. And Republican senators are saying Trump is not being serious. Trump is being reckless. Trump is being unfit. So what we have is Republican senators on multiple fronts saying Trump has gone too far. We have Republican senators saying Trump is wrong. We have Republican senators saying Trump is unfit. And that's potentially the beginning of serious Republican defection. That's potentially the beginning of the end of Trump's control over the Republican Party. And that could matter. That could really matter, because if Republican senators refuse to support Trump's legislation, if Republican senators actively oppose Trump, if Republican senators move toward impeachment, then Trump's power declines significantly. Trump's presidency becomes constrained. Trump's ability to do damage is limited. And that's what Congress is supposed to do. That's what the separation of powers is supposed to provide. So Senate Republicans criticizing Trump is not just talk. It's not just words. It's potentially the beginning of serious constraint on Trump's power. It's potentially the beginning of Congress doing its constitutional duty. It's potentially the beginning of the end of Trump's dominance over the Republican Party. And that could change everything. Nobody expected Republican senators to openly rebuke Trump this harshly. Nobody expected Mitch McConnell to call Trump's plan completely foolish and ethically questionable. Nobody expected multiple Republican senators to step up and say Trump made catastrophic foreign policy mistakes. Nobody expected this level of public criticism from Senate Republicans, but it's happening. And it's because Trump has pushed too far on too many fronts. The lawfare fund is not just a policy disagreement. It's a fundamental question about whether a president should use federal money to compensate his allies and reward loyalty. It's a fundamental question about whether federal institutions should be weaponized for personal political purposes. And Republican senators are saying no. Republican senators are saying that's wrong. Republican senators are saying they won't vote for it. And that's a serious constraint on Trump's power, because if the lawfare fund doesn't pass, if Senate Republicans refuse to support it, then Trump loses a major tool for rewarding allies. Trump loses a major slush fund for his political purposes. Trump loses a way to compensate people who helped him, and that damages Trump's ability to maintain loyalty. Loyalty is everything to Trump. So losing the lawfare fund would be a real hit to Trump's political operation. The Iran deal is also a serious problem for Trump. If Republican senators actively oppose the Iran deal, if Republican senators move to block or reverse it, then Trump's foreign policy is constrained. Trump can't just make major agreements without congressional support. Congress has the power to override Trump on treaty matters. Congress has the power to block Trump on major foreign policy decisions. And if Senate Republicans exercise that power, then Trump's foreign policy becomes severely constrained. The Greenland issue shows that Trump's judgment on foreign policy is in serious question. Trump is threatening to seize another country's territory. Trump is engaging in reckless brinkmanship. Trump is alarming America's closest allies. And Republican senators are saying this is dangerous. Republican senators are saying Trump is being reckless. Republican senators are saying Trump's judgment is questionable. And that's serious criticism. That's criticism that questions Trump's fitness for office. So what we have is Republican senators stepping up on three separate fronts to say Trump is wrong. And that's potentially the beginning of serious constraint on Trump. That's potentially the beginning of Congress doing its constitutional duty. That's potentially the beginning of Trump's isolation within his own party. This is happening right now. This is not speculation. This is not hypothetical. This is real Republican senators making real public statements criticizing Trump. And that's significant. That's a shift in the political landscape. That's a potential beginning of the end of Trump's control over the Republican Party. Because if Republican senators are willing to publicly oppose Trump on major issues, then that opens the door to further opposition. That opens the door to votes against Trump. That opens the door to serious constraint on Trump's power. That opens the door to impeachment if circumstances warrant. And that's potentially how Trump finally gets held accountable, not through the courts, not through Democrats, through his own party, through Republicans who finally decide Trump has gone too far. Senate Republicans are clearly at a breaking point. They're saying they've been pushed to the limit. They're saying they're at the brink. They're saying they won't rubber stamp every Trump demand. And that suggests that more defection is coming. That suggests that Republicans are preparing to oppose Trump on major issues. That suggests that the Republican Party is starting to split. And that's the story. That's what matters. Senate Republicans are publicly rebuking Trump. Senate Republicans are drawing lines. Senate Republicans are preparing to constrain Trump's power. And that's potentially the most important political development in months. That's potentially the beginning of the end of Trump's presidency. Watch Senate Republicans. Watch whether they actually vote against Trump on the lawfare fund. Watch whether they actually move to block or reverse the Iran deal. Watch whether they continue to criticize Trump publicly, because their actions will determine whether this is just talk or whether it's the beginning of serious constraint on Trump's power. The way Senate Republicans have been talking suggests that this could be serious. This could be real. This could be the moment when Trump finally loses control of his own party. Even Trump's most loyal allies are now willing to publicly criticize him. Even the people who have protected Trump for years are now willing to say Trump is wrong. Even the people who have backed Trump consistently are now drawing lines. That shows how extreme Trump's behavior has become. That shows how much Trump has pushed too far. The combination of issues is important. It's not just one problem. It's multiple problems on multiple fronts. It's the lawfare fund. It's the Iran deal. It's the Greenland threats. It's Trump's increasingly erratic behavior. And that combination is pushing even loyal Republicans away. That combination is forcing Senate Republicans to draw lines. That combination is creating a breaking point. And that breaking point could be the moment when Trump's control over the Republican Party starts to crack. That breaking point could be the moment when Republicans start voting against Trump. That breaking point could be the moment when Congress finally starts to check Trump's power. And that's what Senate Republicans are signaling. That's what their public criticism means. That's what their language about being pushed to the limit suggests. The bottom line is this: Senate Republicans are publicly rebuking Trump. Senate Republicans are using harsh language. Senate Republicans are drawing lines. And that's potentially the beginning of serious constraint on Trump's power. That's potentially the moment when Congress starts to do its constitutional duty. That's potentially the beginning of the end of Trump's presidency. The walls are closing in on Trump from within his own party, and the senators who once protected him are now preparing to hold him accountable. Whether they have the courage to follow through on their words remains to be seen, but the fact that they're speaking out at all is a sign that something fundamental has changed in American politics. Trump's grip on the Republican Party is weakening, and the consequences could reshape the political landscape for years to come.